In late 1950, the Korean War entered a new and brutal phase. United Nations forces, led by the United States, had pushed deep into North Korea. General Douglas MacArthur's Home by Christmas offensive was in full swing. The U.S. X-Corps, spearheaded by the 1st Marine Division, advanced towards the Yalu River. Their path led them into the treacherous, high-altitude terrain surrounding the Chosin Reservoir. Unknown to UN intelligence, a massive Chinese force had secretly crossed into Korea. The Chinese People's Volunteer Army's 9th Army Group, numbering around 120,000 men, lay in wait. They were commanded by Song Shilun, a veteran of the Chinese Civil War. The Marines and Army units were stretched thin along a single, precarious mountain road. The weather began to turn, with temperatures plummeting to unimaginable lows. Fierce Siberian winds swept across the plateau, dropping temperatures below -35 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold became an enemy as deadly as the soldiers hiding in the hills. Weapons froze solid, and morphine syrettes had to be thawed in mouths before use. Frostbite became a constant, silent threat, claiming fingers, toes, and noses. On the night of November 27th, the trap was sprung. Bugles and whistles echoed eerily through the frozen valleys, signaling the attack. Tens of thousands of Chinese soldiers swarmed down from the mountains. They slammed into the dispersed American positions at Udumni, Hagaru-ri, and Koto-ri. The 5th and 7th Marine Regiments at Udumni on the west side of the reservoir were hit first. They were surrounded by 3 entire PVA divisions. To the east, Army units of the 7th Infantry Division, known as Task Force McLean, were also ambushed. The fighting was brutal, often devolving into hand-to-hand combat. The Chinese forces were lightly armed, but incredibly numerous and determined. They blew their bugles and crashed cymbals to create confusion and terror. The Marines, though outnumbered, held their ground with grim determination. Their training and discipline proved to be a decisive advantage. Air support from Marine Corsair fighters was critical. The pilots flew in impossible conditions, providing close air support that saved countless lives. They dropped napalm, bombs, and supplies with pinpoint accuracy. Supply drops were often the only source of ammunition and food. The central hub of Hagaru-ri became a vital stronghold. Engineers worked miracles, carving an airstrip out of the frozen earth. This airstrip allowed for the evacuation of the wounded. Each plane that took off was a small victory against the cold and the enemy. Major General Oliver P. Ice Smith, the Marine commander, remained calm under pressure. He famously declared, "Retreat, hell. We're not retreating. We're just attacking in a different direction. Yeah, now." The decision was made to fight their way south to the port of Hungnam. This began a legendary 78-mile fighting withdrawal. The Marines from Udumni had to fight their way back to Hagaru-ri. Every hill and bend in the road was contested by the Chinese. The men of Task Force McLean were tragically wiped out, but their sacrifice bought precious time. The survivors of the various units consolidated at Hagaru-ri. They brought their dead with them, strapped to the hoods of jeeps and trucks. The motto, "Leave no man behind," was upheld at a terrible cost. From Hagaru-ri, the column fought its way south to Koto-ri. The road was a gauntlet of ambushes and roadblocks. One of the greatest obstacles was a destroyed bridge over a deep gorge. This chasm was located at Funchalen Pass. Without a bridge, the entire X-Corps would be trapped. In an incredible feat of logistics and engineering, a solution was found. 8 massive sections of a treadway bridge were dropped by parachute. The Air Force C-119 flying boxcars delivered the sections with remarkable precision. Royal Marines and Army engineers worked in the bitter cold to assemble the bridge. Within 2 days, the gap was spanned. The column of trucks, tanks, and men began to cross. It was a bridge of hope in a landscape of despair. The Chinese forces, exhausted and decimated themselves, could only harass the column. Their own supply lines had failed in the brutal weather. Many Chinese soldiers froze to death in their foxholes. The chosen few finally reached the Hungmem perimeter. A massive naval evacuation was underway. Over 100,000 soldiers and their equipment were evacuated by sea. In a great act of humanity, nearly 100,000 Korean civilians were also rescued. The SS Meredith Victory famously carried 14,000 refugees in a single voyage. The battle was a tactical withdrawal for the UN forces. However, they had crippled the Chinese 9th Army Group. The Chinese unit was rendered combat ineffective for months. The Battle of Chosin Reservoir became a legend in Marine Corps history. It is a testament to endurance, courage, and the will to survive against impossible odds. The advance began with confidence under a crisp autumn sky. They believed the war was nearly over. Landscape grew more rugged with each passing mile. Villages became sparse, replaced by desolate wilderness. The first snowflakes fell gently, a deceptive prelude to the blizzard to come. Rations were frozen solid, requiring an axe to break apart. Sleep was a luxury few could afford, and never for long. The silence of the nights was the most unnerving part. Then the silence would be shattered by a lone bugle call. Flares turned the night into a ghostly, flickering day. The Marines' Montgarand rifles provided a steady, 8-round reply. Medics or corpsmen performed heroics under fire. They moved from man to man, whispers of encouragement amidst the chaos. The Chinese soldiers wore simple canvas shoes, wholly inadequate for the snow. Their bravery was born of desperation and revolutionary zeal. The battle for Fox Hill was a particularly brutal engagement. A single company held off an entire Chinese division for 5 days. This action kept the road open for the withdrawal from Udom Niditwat. The concept of frozen chow became a grim reality. Communication lines were constantly being cut. Runners became the most reliable form of communication between units. The bond between the Marines, the band of brothers, was forged in this crucible. They shared ammunition, rations, and the last of their warmth. The withdrawal was a slow, agonizingly deliberate procession. Tanks provided crucial fire support against hillside ambushes. The wounded were loaded onto any available space on trucks and jeeps. Every man, wounded or not, was expected to fight. The Chinese forces showed respect for the Marines' fighting prowess. They called them the ice soldiers for their resilience in the cold. The arrival at the Hungnem perimeter felt like reaching another world. Hot food and medical care were available for the first time in weeks. The evacuation was a logistical masterpiece, a Dunkirk in reverse. Explosives were used to destroy the port facilities as the last ships departed. The ships sailed south, away from the frozen hell. On board, a profound silence replaced the noise of battle. The survivors would be known forever as the Chosin Few. Their legacy is one of incredible fortitude and courage. The battle redefined the meaning of endurance in modern warfare. The biting wind was a constant, abrasive companion. Sea rations had to be eaten cold, the contents frozen in the can. The metal of a rifle would freeze to exposed skin instantly. Nightfall brought a deep, penetrating cold that settled in the bones. Soldiers huddled together in shallow foxholes for shared warmth. The initial Chinese attacks were a terrifying cacophony of sound. Human wave tactics were employed with devastating effect. The Marines' superior firepower was a key advantage. Every round of ammunition was precious. The fight for Toktung Pass was crucial for the breakout. The Ghost Fleet of the U.S. Navy provided vital support from the sea. The journey south was a continuous, rolling battle. Destroyed enemy tanks and vehicles littered the roadside. The engineers who built the bridge were the unsung heroes. Crossing the bridge was a moment of profound relief. The Chinese 9th Army Group suffered catastrophic losses. Their victory was Pyrrhic, costing them an entire army. The evacuation at Hungnam was an unprecedented logistical feat. The faces of the rescued civilians were a mixture of terror and hope. 5 babies were born during the voyage of the SS Meredith Victory. The battle proved that air power could be decisive in a ground war. The story of Chosin is one of human spirit against the elements. It became a defining moment for the modern U.S. Marine Corps. Veterans carried the memory of the frozen reservoir for the rest of their lives. The cold was a physical presence, an entity to be fought. Daylight hours were short, bringing little warmth. The Marines learned to keep their weapons operational through constant maintenance. The suddenness of the first assault was a complete shock. Mortar rounds fell like deadly rain. The sound of battle echoed and was muffled by the snow-covered hills. Leadership at the small unit level was paramount. The breakout was not a retreat, but a calculated attack. Every yard of the road south was paid for in blood. The sight of the assembled fleet at Hungnam was a vision of salvation. The battle's history is etched in the stark, frozen landscape of North Korea.